let's keep it a beanbag. 2025 is shaping up to be a great year for the horror genre, with about 29 wide-release horror films set across 7 major studios coming out this year. Zach Cregger's Weapons clocked a perfect 100 on Rotten Tomatoes before it even dropped, and opened up to a chunky 42.5 million at the box office in the first weekend. I knew earlier this year when I saw the trailer that I had to see it, and now that I'm a part of that 42.5 million, I had to drop everything and come talk about this masterpiece. Coming up right after Sinners, Final Destination Bloodlines, and 28 years later, right before Jordan Peele's Him, Weapons hits the ground running with a catchy format, top-tier acting, heavy cinematography, and some dope hidden symbolism, and we're going to talk about all of it. I've watched a couple other reviews on YouTube about the film, and I'm going to talk about some things that I haven't seen anybody talking about and tell you who Gladys, the villain of the story, really is. So stay tuned to the end for that. But before I do that, I'd like to thank all of you for watching. And if you're new to Real Enigmas and Theories, welcome. This video will contain spoilers for the movie Weapons, just so you know. So without further ado, let's cook. This is one that you're gonna definitely want to pull out that magnifying glass for. Now, as I said before, this movie has a really dope format. It's broken up into chapters of each main character's perspective. What makes it so special is how each chapter blends the woven interactions with each main character, and it reveals a little bit of information each chapter, and that's how I'll present this analysis of the movie. It starts with a child narrator who pretty much breaks down the premise of the entire movie, laying the ground for us to find out what actually happens in the little in-betweens. The child voice of Maddie takes 5 minutes to explain that 2 years ago, 17 children or kids left their homes early one Wednesday morning at 2:17 a.m. All of those kids were in a 3rd grade classroom at Maybrook Elementary with the same teacher, Justine Gandy, played by Julia Garner. Only one kid from her class remained, and his name is Alex Lilly. Some townspeople died in some really weird ways, and because the authorities couldn't really figure out what happened, they swept it under the rug. But this little girl is telling you the story as it went down. Now, right away, I noticed 2 major clues right off the bat, and some that revealed itself in hindsight. Follow me for a second. The first one is the biggest one that most people are talking about, and that's the time that the kids left. I'm well aware of Stephen King's Shining connection with Room 217 being changed to 237 by Kubrick, and even how Alex's mom puts her head through the door is also being a nod to The Shining. I also noticed the 217 with Miss Gandy and Alex being the only 2 left and the 17 missing children. But the connection that I believe went over everyone's head is the Mahatma Gandhi 217 connection. Follow me for a second. Gandhi was killed in 1948. He was assassinated with an assault rifle. February 17th, 1948, Gandhi's ashes were immersed for a second time for the multicultural, multi-religious ceremony that he shared with the world. Archer, played by Josh Brolin, gets his own chapter, and during it, we see a giant assault rifle with 217 on it. Gandhi was deleted in 1948, and when Archer goes to visit another couple's house who lost their kid as well, their address was 1948. And not only does the name Gandhi and Gandhi share a phonetic likeness, we see the event as a history lesson posted on the board when Justine Gandy first walks into her class. Gandhi, Gandhi, I'm going to rest my case on the Gandhi-Gandhi connection. Let's move right into something else I noticed. The kids, the goats, the flower, Maybrook, Wednesday, and Mrs. Bellentine's class. When the narrator mentions the children not showing up to Mrs. Gandy's class, she mentions the other 3rd grade class of Mrs. Bellentine, which is the old Gaelic pronunciation of the word Beltane. Beltane, or May 1st, is one of the fire festivals. Beltane honors fertility gods and goddesses like Flora, the Roman flower goddess, Maya, the Roman goddess of growth and the namesake of the month May, or Belinus or Belinos, the Celtic sun god. There had to be a reason that other teacher's name was actually mentioned, and the word Maybrook ties directly into that name, and Beltane is the May Day celebration. And the main fertility ritual is the maypole, which is a phallic symbol wrapped in ribbons in a spiral. That totally speaks to the thorny stick that Gladys uses. She wraps hair around that stick during the character Marcus's chapter being played by Benedict Wong. And at some point, she takes one of his actual ribbons and wraps it around the stick just like you would wrap it around a maypole. So ribbons being wrapped around the maypole, and then you have her stealing his ribbon and wrapping it around that thorny stick. That connection is undeniable. I mean, just wait till I tell you who Gladys actually is. You're going to think I'm bugging at first, but the evidence is totally there. Anyway, Maybrook is also another number of completion. 217 equals 10 and Maybrook equals 100. Both numbers of completion. Maybrook's mascot is the billy goat, and this is why I've been calling the children kids. Baby goats or sacrificial animals. Maybrook Elementary is kindergarten through 5th grade, and kindergarten literally translates to garden of children, and May is the 5th month. The goats are also connected to Pan the lustful trickster. Maddie also states that all of this happened on a Wednesday, which is connected to a lustful trickster, which is Mercury, which would also be the 5th grade. Wednesday or Mercury being just the position that Gladys needs to perform her ritual. That leaves us with the flowers, or lilies to be specific. Alex Lily. And if you notice the signs in the hallway, one of them said to vote for Lily for student council. And I'm guessing that's a little girl by the name of Lily who's running for student council. This ties directly to the Beltane rituals once again. Lily and hawthorn are combined and wrapped around the maypole in earlier traditions. Hawthorn is a small tree or a shrub with sharp, woody thorns that can grow 1 to 3 inches long, and it's also known as the Mayflower. I could talk about all of these little bits of esoteric connections in the first act all day, but we're going to move into Justine's chapter. About a month after the children left, the school held a community meeting with parents and things got a bit heated. Marcus is the principal and he tells Justine to go home and lay low until the tensions die down. But this girl heads right to the liquor store. A drug addict character, James, who gets his own chapter later, opens the door for her, and she also gets a sketchy anonymous phone call before buying 2 big bottles of vodka. She heads back home only for her car to be vandalized with red paint while she was inside. The next day, she reports the incident at the police station and she spots Officer Paul, who is her ex and is married to the chief's daughter. He gets his own chapter as well. So she meets up with him later at a bar and takes him back to her place. They wake up in the morning, she drops him off at his car and goes back to Alex's house. She went there because she felt like the police weren't doing enough of a job to find out where these kids were. And she, thought that Alex being the only one in her class, there had to be some answers there. So she went back to his crib. And while she's there, she ends up looking through a window, spotting his parents sitting there on the couch in a daze like zombies. It scares the shit out of her, and she ends up calling Marcus, the principal, telling him that something weird is going on in that house. She heads back to the liquor store again and damn near gets beat up by Paul's wife right there in the vodka aisle. She still buys a bottle of vodka though. She then heads to the school to talk to Marcus and find out that she's being temporarily laid off. She tells Marcus that she wants to speak to Alex Lily, but he advises against that. Tells her to distance herself from the school and the children. Does she listen? No. She follows Alex home and then she camps out outside of his house with one of those big ass bottles of vodka and passes out drunk. Later, Alex's mother comes out in the middle of the night with a pair of scissors, and she's walking like she shit herself and has anterior pelvic tilt. She creeps in the car and snips a lock of Justine's hair, and from right then, I knew it was about to get crazy. Each chapter leaves us at like this crazy cliffhanger that takes us right into the next one. And we go right into Archer's chapter, who looks like he's been staying in his son's room and rewatching the ring cam video of his son Matthew running from the house. Arthur is a contractor who's been making some mistakes due to the stress, like buying the wrong color paint and making the wrong measurements and stuff like that at his job, which is totally understandable with this situation. And then he heads to the police station to find out if there are any developments in the 217 case. But the cops in this town seem to be relying on the $50K reward posters to do all the work for them. That night, Archer has a fever dream around 2:17 in the morning about the disappearance of his son, and he sees a giant assault rifle in the sky with 217 on it. And then he's awakened by seeing Gladys in his son's bed. Scares the shit out of him. The next day, Archer takes matters into his own hands and tries to figure out the trajectory of the children's running path. He uses a basic triangulation method to path out where these children's general area could have landed at, or where their intersecting paths would have been. So he goes to the parents of another child that had ran away, and he sees they live at a 1948 address, which, as I told you before, is a nod to the Gandhi thing in 1948. But he maps out where their daughter would have ran, and then he starts to follow that actual destination path. And while he's doing it, he spots Justine at a gas station on the way. He stops to interrogate her, and while they talk, Marcus comes from behind and attacks Justine. Archer pretty much saves her life by holding Marcus off enough for her to escape. I mean, this dude was looking like he just ate a ghost pepper and took a shot of rubbing alcohol. Bro looked like he smoked a piece of the devil's toenail. So now we move on to Officer Paul and Tom Selleck's mustache chapter. I was honestly surprised that his mustache got its own chapter. Now, the way they set up Paul's chapter really fills in blanks that show you how all of the characters intersect. Something about the way that everyone was connected in this small town kind of gave me the feeling that Gladys knew and exploited those connections with each person. This kind of reveals itself in Marcus's chapter when Gladys asked who made the complaint, but he said that he couldn't tell her, but she knew to send Marcus after Justine anyway. And she did tell Alex that if he told anybody about her presence, that she would know. So I think that she was exploiting the fact that all of these people were semi-connected. So Paul's chapter starts on the day that Justine is at the station reporting the vandalism. It's also confirmed that Paul is married to the chief's daughter. He leaves the station, spots Justine, and heads to his patrol car. And as he's cruising the streets, he spots a suspicious man trying to pry open a window behind a store. He gives chase and catches the man named James, who gets his own chapter later. And the biblical Paul and James reference is noted. Turns out, though, James is a junkie, and Paul pricks his finger on a syringe in James's pocket. Paul socks James in front of his dash camera and realizes his mistake. He threatens James to stay away from town before letting him go. Two things here. One, he just got stuck by a junkie needle. Two, he's on camera striking the handcuffed man and knocking him out. This idiot goes back to his police chief father-in-law and asks him for help to try to sweep this thing up under the rug. That totally speaks to what the narrator said about the town not being able to figure out what happened and sweeping the shit up under the rug. He gets a text from Justine, and he meets up with her in the bar like we saw in her chapter. And when she asked about his finger, he just told her it was something that happened at work. So he goes back to her place and smashes, which is crazy being that he just got pricked with that syringe from the junkie. It's almost like he did that shit on purpose. Hungover and feeling guilty about cheating on his wife after pricking his finger, he heads to work and sees James walking across the street and gives chase again. Now, the oath symbolism is heavy here, with the finger pricking resonating with what the witch is doing. And the spiraling of bad decisions back to back also echoes the spiraling of the ribbon or hair around the witch's wand. Zach Cregger, well done on this chapter here. It gave us a lot of information and it was pretty funny and dope. And a lot of this movie is like hilariously funny. James's chapter is no different. And let's just get right into James' chapter. Anyway, it starts off with him trying to get smoke from an empty crack pipe. Broda went from prom king to prom fiend. But this ain't New Jack City. This is Maybrook. And James is trying to get high. So he ends up walking the streets of the town in search for something to steal and sell. And this is how he encounters Paul and the whole finger prick thing happens, and then the sucker punch. So the next day or so, he's walking around in the rain and he finds himself at Alex's house with the unkept lawn and the newspaper deliveries piling up in the driveway. And he assumes that he can break in this place and find something since it looks like nobody's home. He gets in there and he starts searching around for stuff, and then he turns around and looks and sees Alex's parents sitting on the couch, and it scares the shit out of him. But he investigates and he looks at them, gets right in their face, and realizes that they're awake but unresponsive and something's going on with them. So he just commences to his stealing. There's this one point where he picks up the movie Willow in a DVD and he even says it out loud. And the funny thing about that movie is that there's a ritual done near the end that mirrors the ritual that Gladys does to compel the children. The sorceress Bavmorda cuts a lock of hair from a child and mixes it up with her blood. She's got the magic herbs, the candles all around, the whole gambit, just like Gladys. This clue in the film with the Willow DVD is a huge detail to who Gladys actually is. And I'm going to round it all up for you by the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. He starts to grab some of the silverware before stumbling down into the basement to find all 17 kids standing there unresponsive as well. Then he runs back upstairs and starts grabbing whatever he can and ends up getting chased out by Alex's parents, who stand up from the couch out of nowhere. And after all that, does he call the police to tell them about the kids in the basement? No, he heads right to the pawn shop with that silverware that he lifted. And that's where he sees a $50,000 reward for the information leading to the kids. Even before that, he takes the money that he gets from the pawn shop and still goes to get high before he even calls the number on the poster. He ends up headed to the police station where he gets chased by Magnum PI and run back to his tent in the woods. Crazy thing is, Gladys shows up to him in the woods and waves at him, and he gets scared and runs and jumps into his tent, and he readies a few syringes to stab whoever comes to that tent. Someone comes to the tent and he leaps and stabs them, catching Officer Paul right in the face with those needles. Paul aims that shotgun at James, and James stops him from shooting him by telling him that he knows where those missing kids are. He handcuffs him, throws him in back of the cruiser, and heads over to Alex's house. And when he gets there, the door opens and lets Paul in. And he goes in the house and leaves James out there handcuffed in the back of the cruiser until nightfall. Then he comes out and drags James back into the house. Another crazy cliffhanger for the end of that chapter. Now, the next chapter is Marcus's chapter, which is probably the craziest one. Very climactic, and we get to see Gladys in action. We also get to see Marcus in action. It starts with that phone call where Marcus was on the phone with Justine right after she had been to Alex's parents' house and seen them through the window, a few days before she runs into Archer at the gas station. Marcus is in the grocery store with his partner picking out junk food and telling Justine to stay away from Alex's house. The next day, he arranges a meeting with Alex's guardian to address this informal complaint from Justine. Gladys is who shows up, but Marcus is insistent on speaking with Alex's parents. Gladys asks who made the complaint, but Marcus never tells her. And we see her eyeing one of his possessions, which is that ribbon. Long story short, she uses that ribbon that she lifts out of his office to control him, makes him pretty much headbutt his partner into the kitchen floor, and has him go after Justine. How she knew Justine is the one that made the complaint isn't clear. This is where we really get to see the ritual that Gladys does to gain control over her victim. She wrapped a piece of the ribbon around the stick of thorns and drew blood from herself, I'm guessing to bind herself to that victim. Then she rings a bell to gain control. She took that lock of Justine's hair and wrapped it around the stick as well. And then when she snapped the stick, that set Marcus after Justine. And I'm gonna tell you, him and his partner had the matching sweatsuits on, and they had the Mandela effect Mickey Mouse Steamboat Willie joints on, but his partner had on some sandals and he had on some running shoes. And good thing he had on them running shoes. I could imagine if he had on sandals like his partner and was trying to run through the town like that, because he was ass and elbows through the city looking for her like a heat-seeking missile. This is where the story intertwines what before, but we get to see him actually chase Justine into the store and out onto the street where he ends up getting hit by a car while he was chasing her. Archer and Justine both get their wounds checked at the hospital, and Archer shows Justine that the children were running the same way Marcus was. That whole situation erases Archer's suspicions about Justine, and together they realize that the children might be at the house of Alex Lilly. This chapter was definitely one of the craziest installments, and we really got to see that bell in that downward triangle, which looks like a numeral 6, but I think it's actually the golden spiral curve wrapped around a central void. And this ties it directly into the logarithmic spiral of 5, taking us right back to that magic maypole symbolism. We'll see that spiral again on some of the clothes that Gladys wears. I'm gonna talk about that later. Now we get to the last part before I break down who Gladys really is, and that's Alex's chapter. I really wish we would have gotten a Gladys chapter to give us her backstory, but since we didn't get that, the last chapter for this video will be telling you who I think she is. Stay tuned. I don't buy her being the aunt of Alex at all. Why would she bear the last name of Alex if she's his maternal aunt? That would make her the paternal aunt if she shares the last name as the father. And at one point, the father says that they haven't seen her in about 15 years, but she claims to have seen Alex when he was a baby, and there's no way that that kid is 15. We learn that Alex is being bullied by Archer's son, Matthew, and Alex's dad picks him up from school and affectionately calls him X-Man. Neither Alex nor his father seem too excited to have Aunt Gladys coming to stay. Now, Gladys is older and can barely walk on her own, and her presence brings some tensions in the house, but Alex's mother insists on having old auntie stay with them. One day, Alex walks outside for his father to pick him up from school, but he didn't show up, and Alex had to walk home himself. He gets home to find his parents sitting at the table in a mindless trance. Both of his parents are able to speak, and I think this is due to them not being under the spell for that long. I think that the longer you're under her spell, the farther your mind slips away from control. Archer ends up in Gladys's spell at some point, but after the spell is broken, he's able to go back to his normal self, and I think that's due to him only being under the spell for a few minutes. Alex's father calls him X-Man while under the spell, and his mother asks him how school was. I have to point out Gladys's choice of clothing throughout the movie and her sense of style. That gives us a clue to who she actually is, and we'll be talking about the deeper meaning after this chapter, but peep her corduroy and rose brooch. We're going to talk about it in a few. But by the next morning, they both were under Gladys's spell in full control. When Alex comes downstairs the next day, his parents are still at the table just sitting there. No good morning or anything. And Gladys pretty much makes them stab their own faces with forks as a way to threaten Alex to obey her and not mention anything about her to anyone. She even warns him that she can make them eat each other, and this is also a clue to who she really is. Alex listens and goes back to school each day just a shell of himself, keeping the secret of Gladys's evil enchantment at the home. Alex has to feed his parents soup, and I have no idea who was changing or cleaning these people, because eating only canned goods is surely going to give these people the runs. I mean, Gladys does make people run, but I'm talking about a different runs. She must ring that bell at some point to make everybody line up at the bathroom to take shits. Anyway, one night Gladys calls out for Alex, and when he gets to her room, she's laying on the floor throwing up in a pot. She explains to him that she's sick and his parents aren't enough to make her well. She instructs him to bring the belongings of each of his classmates back to her. We even see her natural hair in braids. Alex goes to school the next day and takes each of the students' name tags and brings them all back to Gladys. Early the following morning, Alex hears Gladys in the kitchen performing the ritual and gets up to see what she's doing. She offers blood and cuts up pieces of the name tags and spits into the vessel and sparks a match into the bowl. Then at 2:17, she rings the bell and her and Alex wait at the door. Alex bears witness to all of his classmates running one by one into the house in the middle of the night. Alex is also paying very close attention to everything that Gladys does. Days go by and Gladys has to prepare the house and hide the kids with another spell. She has to compel his father to attend a meeting with the investigators. She uses spell after spell right in front of Alex and shows him the basics of her spell work in the days passing after the kids' disappearance. And he watches all of this while not only feeding his parents, but now he's feeding the kids too. One day, Alex comes home to see a cop car outside, but when he goes in, it's James and Paul standing in a trance while his parents are upstairs guarding the door. Gladys tells Alex to get ready because they're leaving tomorrow and to not step over the salt. Alex goes to bed but sees Archer's truck outside, and Justine and Archer are camped outside the house when the front door opens and Paul comes outside to signal them to come in. Now, this is the part of Alex's chapter where everyone's perspective comes together for the end. When they enter the house and step over the salt, they're attacked by James and Paul. This part had me rolling. Archer was just tossing the skinny junkie around the room while Justine was slicing Paul's face with a potato peeler. First, she sliced him a new sideburn and then sliced the syringe holes off his face. And the irony here is how he smashed her after getting pricked by that needle, and now she has to pop him in the head with his own weapon. She should still go get checked though. Even crazier, she pops the person who the syringes originally came from. Again, she should still get checked. Anyway, Archer goes into the basement to get the kids and is caught by Gladys. I wonder how she was strong enough to overpower him. Alex steps over the salt and his parents charge for him to rip him apart before he makes his way to Gladys's room. Archer comes up from the basement to choke Justine, and Alex gets a hold of that plant and compels the children to attack Gladys. Gladys runs out of the house in one of the funniest scenes I've ever witnessed in a horror flick. She's running and screaming in terror while 17 supercharged kids chase her through the neighborhood before they catch her and rip her to pieces. I mean, these kids is busting through screen doors, windows, they knocking down wooden fences. Yo, this scene was crazy. The spell is broken from all who were compelled by her. Archer lets Justine go. Alex's parents chilled the fuck out, and the kids just stood in the yard over the stain that was once Gladys. Archer makes his way to the kids and gets his son Matthew, who is unresponsive just like Alex's parents and the rest of the kids. The children are gone, and as the narrator said in the beginning, they never came back. She did say that one of the girls started talking 2 years later though. Now this ending gives us a major key to examine. The fact that Archer was able to snap out of the spell and go back to his normal self, it's safe to say that it was due to the time he was under the spell. It also explains why his parents were able to still address Alex when he first came home. I mean, his father called him X-Man. This is connected to the health of Gladys. When she first arrived, she needed walking assistance, but after her first 2 victims, she was able to make it downstairs and threaten Alex. After she got the children, she was able to visit the school, clean the house for the investigators, visit the school again, and walk across town to Marcus's house. She was probably draining energy from all of her victims that whole time. By the end of the movie, she had enough energy to run through that neighborhood. She was obviously absorbing the life force of her victims, and it was working. But who is she, and how did she learn to do this? She was obviously a traveler, much like the band of witches in Dr. Sleep. And much like them, her time was running short and she needed a healthy re-up. No doubt she learned to do this magic in her travels, picking up skills and possible knowledge from her teachers and victims. She told Marcus that the parents were experiencing a bit of consumption, which is true because she was consuming them, but the old school reference was noticed by Marcus, and that puts her actual age in question, just as much as her actual relationship to the lilies. The magic that she uses, along with the tree, blood offering, the ability to show up in dreams, the ability and strength to overpower Archer, are surely a result of her living a long life and studying several crafts over time, making her age ambiguous. Her sense of style and clothing choices doesn't look like something she just picked up while Alex was in school. Her style is deliberately playful while she conceals her thinning braids with a bright red wig and overdone red lipstick. That corduroy top that I spotted earlier with the rose brooch is symbolic of the nature in her spell, rose thorns and spirals. She spirals possessional items around thorns. And this choice of clothing is very intentional. We see her mismatched patterns and vibrant colors and a need to stay young forever at any cost. From her blue hepatica Mayflower earrings to meditating in front of the enchanted tree. And I'm not trying to beat around the bush by saying all of this, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. Gladys is Pippi Longstocking. Hold up, wait a minute, don't leave yet. I'm not bugging, or maybe I am, but just let's look at the evidence for a second. Starting with her age. The first Pippi Longstocking book was written by Astrid Lindgren and published in Sweden in 1945. Lindgren never pins down an exact year for when Pippi Longstocking takes place, but all the details point to a contemporary rural Sweden of the early mid-1940s. Across the novels, Pippi remains about 9 years old no matter how many years of seafaring adventures she recounts. Her tales often imply that she's lived for years in far places. She sailed the seas since she was a baby and experienced events that would span decades, even though she never grows older. A large part of her mythos comes from strange and seemingly magical skills she claims to have learned during her travels. She talks about encounters with fakirs, shamans, snake charmers, and eccentric wanderers who teach her tricks that sound like equal parts of sleight of hand, survival skill, and pure magic. Knowledge of faraway rituals, uncanny talents, and strength create the aura of somebody who has tapped into esoteric wisdom. I mean, this girl can toss grown men into trees and lift a horse with one hand. Look back at Gladys for a second. She actually fits the bill for this. Also, that corduroy top that she had is a clue. Corduroy literally translates to cloth of the king or cord of royalty. This is folk etymology, but the translation stands. Pippi's father is known as the Negro King of Curry Curry Island, an island of cannibals. And that goes back to Gladys telling Alex that she can make his parents eat each other. Also, the children can be seen eating her at the end of the movie. The 1988 Willow movie was referenced and actually spoken in the script. It shows a ritual sacrifice just like the one we saw Gladys doing. And the New Adventures of Pippi Longstocking movie was also released in 1988. So why the reference to that 80s classic Willow? In the 1988 Pippi, she talks about her father being the king, and many took her stories to be tall tales. But there has to be truth to it, being that in the beginning of the movie, we do see her traveling the seas with her father. And at the end of the movie, he shows up and confirms that he is indeed the king of an island of cannibals.
At first, the islanders wanted to eat me.
Are you really a cannibal king?
Aye, but there's no danger now.
Her charm, coupled with fearless personality, gives Pippi a peculiar ability to compel adults and sway children. Grown-ups often find themselves talked into letting her do whatever she wants, too confused or entertained to even stop her. Children, on the other hand, are drawn into her orbit like moths to a flame, especially when she tempts them with ideals of running away from home. References to killer whales.
Hey, listen, I'm the killer whale, and you're the shipwreck kid.
References to cannibals and even a Coke placement. Somehow, Pippi must have taken a dark turn, and she's trying to stay young forever. And it was working, but that magic came at a cost. She still braids her hair under that wig, but the wig itself is a desperate attempt to reach out for that bright red hair contained in her youth. I mean, come on. Gladys Knight and the Pips, Pippi Longstocking. I'm telling you right now, Zach Cregger was digging into his comedy roots for this indeed. And I have to say, well done. I mean, the Gandhi references, Willow, the Bellantane references, all of the Stephen King nods, Room 217. They even hit a few points of the Institute. Marcus has a jar of jelly beans like Sigsbee. Sigsbee pricks her fingers. Gladys takes the kids from a school. Sigsbee takes the kids to a school. Both of them weaponize the children. I mean, these folks really cooked up a horror masterpiece. There's definitely going to be some heavy competition in the horror category come award season. You got Sinners, 28 Years Later, Final Destination Bloodlines, a few other ones along with Him coming up next month by Jordan Peele with Marlon Wayans. Drop down in the comments and let me know what you think about Gladys Pippi Longstocking. And, there you have it. A bit of history, a bit of esoteric meaning, some good theories and jokes. And if you like this video, go ahead and do all that dope YouTube stuff. Tap that screen for me a few times. And if you're not subbed yet, hopefully this will be the video that'll make you do it. I have some videos planned for the future, but let me know what you want to cook up in the comments. That's all for my video this evening. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.